Okay, welcome everyone to Parsha de Shavua from Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. Baruch Hashem, I've gotten messages and emails that there are people watching in Australia, Brazil, Canada, America as we speak. Every week it's different, so welcome from wherever you're watching. And of course, most of you are going to watch this when this is archived on Tuesday night. And everyone welcome. Please help us spread the word. Put it up on your Facebook wall and help us get the word out. Tonight we're learning Parshat Bo, and we're going to concentrate on one verse and the awesome implications of this one verse. So the context of this one verse is last week we had the first 7 of 10 plagues. And the first half of this week's Parsha, we have the last 3 plagues. And then in the verse that we're going to learn, God gives Moshe a series of instructions to the Jewish people how to prepare before the last plague, because once that plague hits, they're leaving. So there's a series of preparations of what they should expect is coming. And the Parsha ends with a lot that gets incorporated into the Seder of Pesach. And then the last plague happens, and basically at the end of the Parsha, we basically are leaving Egypt. So we're going to concentrate on the beginning of the instructions that God gives to Moshe for the Jewish people to leave Egypt. Again, this is right before the last plague. So it's chapter 12, verse 1, which is Perak Yud Bet, Pasuk Aleph. In the Art Scroll, it's on 348. And it says like this. It's actually 2 verses. It says, V'yomer Hashem Moshe ve'el Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim lemor. And God said to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, okay, and this is the pasuk we're going to concentrate. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chadashim. Rishon hu lachem lechodshei hashana. This month is the first of the months. The first to you of the months of the year. So it repeats the word chodesh in different grammatical forms 3 times. Again, this month is the first of the months. First of the months of the year, and it will be to you the first of the months. So the sages learn an incredible amount from this verse. But the important thing that everyone agrees, this is the first mitzvah commanded to the Jewish people as a whole. Before this, we've had individual mitzvahs to Adam, Noach, Avram, Yaakov, circumcision, don't eat the gida nasheh, the sinu in the animal, to be fruitful, multiply. But this is the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people. So obviously it has tremendous importance. And everyone makes that comment. This is the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people. So what is it telling us? It's telling us more that this is the first of the months. According to our tradition, that at this point, God at least begins to give over to Moshe all the secrets of the Jewish calendar. And the Jewish calendar is incredibly complex and profound, because it's a unique calendar. It's a lunar calendar that makes adjustments for the solar calendar. most calendars in the world are either strictly solar or strictly lunar. This is a unique calendar that is lunar, but makes an account for the solar. It combines them. This is really, in a sense, one of the many, many secrets of the Magen David, of the two different triangles. One is the solar and one is the lunar, and they're linked together. But our calendar is primarily a lunar calendar. And that's why the introduction is, this is the first of the months. What month are we talking about? Nisan. And Nisan is called the first month, despite the fact that many people think, oh, well, Rosh Hashanah happens in the fall, that's the first month. But anyone who reads the Torah sees that Rosh Hashanah falls out in the 7th month, meaning there's a new year for years and a new year for months. They're not the same thing. That's, again, the Magen David. There's two different accountings happening here. But that's a different subject for a different time. What we want to concentrate on tonight is what I'll call the mystery of time. Secrets of time that are embedded in this mitzvah. And why is this the first mitzvah? Why is this the first mitzvah in preparation for leaving Egypt? So the simple understanding, it's not so simple, but the simple understanding is in preparation for a nation of slaves to leave slavery and to go to freedom, on the most practical level, entails becoming a master of time, becoming free in the aspect of time. Because one of the definitions of a slave is a slave is not in control of their time. They have no control of their time. They're not autonomous. They do what they're told when they're told to do it. So to be free, one has to free themselves from this consciousness that I'm a slave to X, my job. I'm a slave to time. I'm a slave to my desires. I'm a slave to power. I'm a slave to low self-esteem, whatever it is. But here, obviously, God felt that this aspect of time was so important, it needed to be the first preparation for leaving Egypt. And as I said, according to tradition, it's not just that the mitzvah is that Nisan is the first of the months. Along with this comes the entire concept of time. So a second aspect of why this is the first mitzvah is something that's emphasized in Hasidic thought extensively. And that is the concept called hitchadshut, renewal, rejuvenation, and rebirth. From the word chadash, chadash, new, comes from chodesh, which means new moon. They're the same word. The new moon and newness are the same idea. And that is the reason that we have a lunar calendar, as we'll see as we develop the concept of time, because the lunar calendar links us to constant renewal. A solar calendar, time just goes. In other words, in our mentality, there's not so much difference between January, February, and March. They're like the winter months. But we don't feel there's like an intrinsic difference really between January, February, and March. Or in the summer, June, July, August. But when you have a lunar calendar, every month has its own energy. And just like the moon goes to a beginning, it grows to fullness, and then it wanes and it begins again. This is linked deeply to the Jewish history of exile and redemption. As the moon wanes, it goes into exile. And when it reaches fullness, again, we're talking symbolically here, it reaches redemption. And this is Jewish history. Jewish history is waning and waxing of exile and redemption over and over and over again. So these things are not casual parallels here. They're deeply embedded one in the other. So this idea of the ability to renew oneself is called the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people. That's how important it is on a personal level. The ability to renew ourselves. And everyone knows what it feels to be in a rut. And everyone knows what it feels to feel that they're boxed in and they like, I can't move this way, I can't move that way, I'm stuck. And then something comes along to get us moving, and like that feeling of rebirth, of a new start, spring, right? Spring is here. So we could all understand that. On a national level, this is of cardinal importance because of our history of exile and redemption, and a very, very, I'll use the word tortured history. We have had to renew ourselves on the national level, but I'm talking about community by community. How many villages were wiped out? Not just in the Holocaust, but throughout history. And people survived, and they started again, and again, and again. How many expulsions? How many inquisitions? The fascinating book, the Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean. The Inquisition was not just in Spain. The Inquisition was transplanted to the whole New World. Jews were hunted down in everywhere that the Spaniards went, in South America and in North America. So this idea of the ability to renew ourselves is fundamental in understanding Jewish survival. How many, and many people know people alive today who came to America or other places with their shirt on their back after World War II. With the shirt on their back. And many of them had, everyone knows what they went through. And they had the holy chutzpah to start again. So that's I gave two different, like very practical but profound reasons why this is the first mitzvah. But we want to go much deeper than this. We're going to go much deeper than this. So Rav Ginsburg reveals that this is the 1,820th verse in the Torah. 1820th verse in the Torah. So everyone will say, so? So 1820 equals 26 times 70. So 26 is God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. 70 is Sod, secret. Or, like we say, there's 70 faces to the Torah. So, okay, now it's starting, right, to make sense a little bit. But there's a verse that puts these two words together. Sod Hashem Lire'av. The secret of God are to those who are in awe of Him or in fear of Him. Who have fear of God, awe of God. To that person, the secrets of God are given over. So on one hand, we understand this to mean the deeper dimensions of the Torah. Call it Kabbalah, the mystical tradition. The secrets of God are given over to those who have awe of Him. But on even a simpler connection. Well, why this verse? So we could read it. What is the secret of God? The secret of time. Because that's what we're talking about here. That's the mitzvah here. God is giving over to Moshe how to become a master of time. A free person is one who understands how to use time. Now we're going to try to develop this in two directions. A very mystical direction, actually three directions, a very scientific and a very practical, all at the same time. All at the same time. So this secret is already alluded to in Bereshit, in the story of Avram, that after Avram buries Sarah, and we're told that that whole story has to do with the connection, because Avram buries Sarah in Hebron. Hebron means lechaber, to unite. For those who were here when we learned that, Hebron means to connect, chibur. And that Hebron is the connection between this world and the world to come. Just like Jerusalem is the connection is the gate of prayer between this world and the upper worlds. So after that experience, where Avram had this experience of life and death, and ability to transcend that. So it says, "Avram zaken ba b'yamim, v'Hashem beirach et Avram bakol." Avram became old, and he came into days, and God blessed Avram with everything. As always, there's much to be learned from this verse. I'm only bringing it for one reason. First of all, zaken, he became old. So the Chazal say means old in wisdom. In Judaism and many other traditions, becoming old means becoming wise. So Avram became wise, and he came into days. So what does that mean? Again, many different interpretations. Some say it means that he had 1 foot in this world and 1 foot in the world to come. His consciousness was now be able to span, to bridge what we think of the wall between this world and the world to come, between life and death. His consciousness was able to transcend that. He came into days. That's why the after death is called the world to come. It's coming. Ba b'yamim. He came into days. And the other one is, through his wisdom, he learned the secret of using time. He was able to accomplish in, let's say, a day, what some people take a year or a lifetime. That's what I mean. He came into days. We'll go back with some examples of this. So now let's look at, because now we're delving into time here. Let's look at 4 paradigms of time. For those who are interested and those who have in the Orchard of Delights, this is a section in this week's Parsha. 4 perspectives of time. These are very, very important. And we'll start what we'll call from the bottom to the top, because these 4 levels correspond to the 4 letters of God's name. So on the simple, and they're all true simultaneously, but we'll see how we relate to them. On one level, the lowest level, time runs linear. Past, present, future. It just goes. There's no stopping it. There's no and there's so many poems and songs have been written. Joni Mitchell, you can't get off the carousel of time, and time as a flowing river. It just, right? You could stand there forever, and it just keeps on flowing. That's called time on a linear level. The next concept of time, or perspective, and again, they're not contradictory, but they go up in consciousness. They all have realities, and it all depends on how we relate to time, as we'll see as we develop this further. The second one is seeing time as a circle. And this is connected with this mitzvah, because this mitzvah gives over the secrets of the Jewish calendar, which on a certain level hooks us in to a more circular concept of time. Now, the reason that the lunar, a Muslim calendar is purely lunar. And therefore, and we've discussed this a number of times, Ramadan, for instance, is not connected to a season. And since the lunar calendar is 11 days shorter than the solar, in every 3 years, Ramadan will be a full month earlier than it was before. So in 30 years, it will go around the whole calendar. Ramadan will be in every month of the year, because it's not connected. But one of the meanings here is that Nisan is the first month of the year, and later it says 2 different times, make sure to keep Pesach in the spring, because in the spring you came out of Egypt. Meaning that the holiday is connected to a season, and it's connected to an agricultural reality in Eretz Yisrael. And so therefore, we have to make, that's how we know, in combination with this, we have to make amends for the solar calendar, or Pesach would not be in the spring. It would end up in the winter. But that's not what Pesach is about. Pesach must be in the spring, because Pesach represents the energy of spring and rebirth and renewal. So our whole calendar hooks us into the seasons and going around and around in a circle. So that, in a sense, is a higher level than seeing time just going. But it's not the highest level. The higher level is seeing time as a spiral. Why? Because if we conceive the time as only as a circle, it's true we would come around, but it would be like, what's the connection between this Rosh Hashanah and last Rosh Hashanah? We got to the same place in the circle, but we're just going in circles. A spiral is going in a circle, but it's always going up. But look what happens. Let's say this is Rosh Hashanah, okay? So you go around, and then you come back to Rosh Hashanah on one level higher. And then you go around a spiral, and you come back, same vortex. So all the Rosh Hashanahs connect. All the Pesachs connect. All one's birthdays connect. So this is a much higher level of conceiving of time, because in a sense it combines the circle and time running linearly, but it curves it in a way that it does come back to the same point, so you can connect. And I'm sure everyone's experienced this. You sit down at the Pesach Seder, and you look around, and you look at all the symbols of the table, and all of a sudden, all these memories come rushing back, like every Pesach you've had, right? Because the smell is the same, The looks are the same. Sometimes the people are the same, years older. The Haggadahs are the same Haggadahs you used, right? And it's just, and you're hooked in to every link on the chain. And the beauty of Pesach is that we've been keeping the Seder of Pesach all the ways going back to this Parsha. This is the Parsha where we begin to get the laws of Seder. So it hooks us back. So we'll say, okay, so that's the third level. But there's a higher level. And that's the level of transcending time altogether. And that's called a divine perspective of time. And this we have to obviously explore. What does it mean, a divine perspective of time? So this we see going back to the idea that this is the 1820th verse, Sod Hashem, because the name of God, the 4 letters of the name of God, are the exact 4 letters that spell out Haya, Hoveh, Yiyeh. What was, is, and will be. This is Adon Olam. V'hu Haya, V'hu Hoveh, V'hu Yiyeh B'tifara. So how is that translated? He was, he is, and he will be. But as explained in Kabbalah and Chassidut, that's looking at time as linear. He was, he is, and he will be. But it's explained for God's perspective, it's all happening at the same time. Haya, Hoveh, and Yiyeh are the same thing. These are the same letters, and they make the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. So this is a deep Kabbalistic concept that wasn't really understood fully until Einstein. What that meant, in other words, a Torah scholar, a Kabbalist understood it from a level of seichel, a level of intellect or consciousness. But then Albert Einstein came and unlocked on a scientific level the secrets of light and time and relativity and space-time. And this we're going to have to go deeper into now. So we saw that there are 4 perspectives of time. And we began from really the lower Hey in God's name, and then the Vav, and the spiral is the Hey, and then the Yud is already the divine aspect of time, divine perspective of time. So again, when our tradition tells us that for God, past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously, it's all one, so it stretches the mind. But that is exactly how Einstein described the speed of light. That at the speed of light, no time passes. No time passes. A photon that was released at the Big Bang and has been traveling, because a photon is light and travels at the speed of light, no time has passed from then till now. So again, that bends the mind. But we're told that this is reality. This is not Kabbalah. It is Kabbalah, but it's now called quantum physics. So now that we've entered into quantum physics. We're going to continue. That until Einstein, we talked about three dimensions of space: length, width, and breadth. That's what we envision as dimensions of reality. Makes sense. Einstein developed this idea and introduced an idea of time as a dimension, what's called the fourth dimension. This was revolutionary, mind-boggling. What does that mean? Time is a dimension. Space we can see. We can see how tall something is, how wide it is, how deep it is. What does it mean, time is a dimension? So I'm going to be quoting from a book called The Elegant Universe. I don't know if anyone can see this, by Brian Greene. It's an absolute classic book. I've not cover to cover, but I've read it and reread it countless times because so much of it is over my head, and only in little snippets can I absorb, despite the fact that he does, try to bring it down to layman's terms. But everyone knows this idea that we now posit four dimensions: time and space. And in fact, it's called the time-space continuum. And that's what Einstein revealed, that you cannot divide time from space. They're intrinsically woven together. But still, what does that mean? So here's a simple metaphor to understand, at least on a simple level. But it's a breakthrough idea. And this is what Brian Greene says. You want to meet someone. So you say to them, I'll meet you on First Avenue. Bye. You only know one dimension. Where on First Avenue? What's the cross street? Okay, second scenario. I'll meet you on First Avenue and State Street. Bye. Well, you get there, and there's skyscrapers. Well, did he mean on the street? Did he mean on the 4th floor? Did he mean on the 20th floor? Take 3. I'll meet you on First Avenue and State Street on the corner building on the 4th floor. So now we have the 3 dimensions of space. Without the 3 coordinates, we're lost. I mean, it's a beautiful, simple metaphor to understand what does it mean even that space is a dimension. We need the 3 dimensions in which to operate. Bye. When? Today? Tomorrow? Next year? 4 o'clock? 8 o'clock? If you don't have the dimension of time, you can't meet either. So he explains that's what it means, time is the 4th dimension. That you can't separate it from space. So this in itself is just it's so simple. But if you would ask anyone here, including myself, before a few hours ago, can you explain how time is the 4th dimension? I'd have no idea what to say. So this helped me enormously understand what does it mean that time is a dimension. But now we're going to introduce the idea, and then science has stopped. 4 dimensions. In the Sefer Yetzirah, which is attributed to Avram Avinu, and by many accounts, edited by Rabbi Akiva. So it's at least 2,000 years old. The Sefer Yetzirah posits 5 dimensions. And it's called, in the original, Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. World, which is space. Year, which is time. And Nefesh, which is soul. We'll translate soul as consciousness. So the Sefer Yetzirah, 2,000 years, says there's really 5 dimensions. When you take the extremities of those 5 dimensions, you get the 10 Sfirot. That's a connection, a very deep connection with the 10 Sfirot. The 2 extremities of these dimensions become the 10. 5 times 2 is 10, is the 10 Sfirot. So, well, what about Nefesh? How do we contemplate Nefesh as a dimension? So now, anyone can Google this, and you'll see, you'll be mind blown. Right now in quantum physics, the cutting edge of quantum physics is dealing with the role of consciousness in the formation and perception of reality. I'm not going to delve into it deeply because it's an enormous subject. We're going to touch on practical aspects of that. But anyone could Google the role of consciousness in quantum physics, and you'll come up with 100 websites now. Just mind-boggling because quantum physics now recognizes, they're not calling soul yet a dimension, but they have recognized that consciousness is key, the key ingredient in determining reality. I'll leave it for everyone to look into it themselves, but just trust me that this is right now the cutting edge of quantum physics right now. So the Sefer Yetzirah was 2,000 years ahead here. And we're going to see its connection to time. But before we do it, I want to explain another thing. And you have to bless me to be successful at this, because it's not so simple. But everyone has heard, and you'll see how important this is, everyone's heard that when the velocity of matter approaches the speed of light, so what happens to time? Slows down. Slows down. And as we already said, at the speed of light, time stops. So of course, again, this is mind-boggling. But 1 million experiments later, it's fact. We know it on the simple level, just when they first started sending spaceships. And they would send clocks into space. When they came back, different time than Earth time. And these are spaceships that in relationship to the speed of time are slow. They're not going so fast at all. Remember, time is 186,000 miles a second. So a spaceship going even a few thousand miles a second is like nothing. But technically, if there were clocks that could gauge to the billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second. An example, I'm standing on a corner and I I'm going to time a car racing down the street. And it's racing at 100 miles an hour, not very fast at all. Someone with a watch in the car would have a different time than me standing on the street. Because motion affects time, even at a little bit. Even at a little bit. But we don't feel it at all. It is so minute that it doesn't even come into play in our reality. But these huge super accelerators that they're making, these atom smashers, and the one that they made under the border of Switzerland and France, it goes like 25 miles, and they're shooting subatomic particles at the speed, as close to the speed of light as they can. That's how they do these experiments. So, if time is a dimension, and for anyone who's watching, we're going to bring this back to very practical things in our own lives. But it's such a fascinating subject, we want to tie it all together here. The mitzvah with the mysticism, with the science, with the practicality of it. So if time, let me put it this way. So how do we explain that time stops when it reaches light? Again, if you asked me this before a few hours ago, I would be able to say that this is what they know now, but I couldn't explain it. I finally understood Brian Greene's explanation, and it's just super profound. So here goes the best I can do. So when Einstein revealed 4 dimensions and E equals mc squared and everything about light and relativity, he found the thing that glued everything together was light and motion. So we think of things moving in space. But we also think of time moving. If you just look at your watch right now, you'll see the hand is moving. In other words, but this is only recorded, this is not time. This is a recording of time. But Einstein says, no, time is moving also. There is a reality that time is moving. So you'll say, wait a minute, if I put this chair here and nothing moves it, so it's not moving. So Einstein said, no, it is moving through time. What does that mean? It's connected to the law of entropy. If that chair sits there long enough, it eventually will fall apart. Because time is acting on it. It is moving through time, just like a car moves through space, just like we walk down the street. So Einstein understood that motion is connecting these 4 dimensions. So then he made what we call a quantum leap. This is a play on words here. He made a quantum leap here. When he realized that motion will slow time down, he made a quantum leap that all of space-time is in motion, is in constant motion at the speed of light. The combination of space and time equals the speed of light. Now, we don't experience that. But here's how he explains how can it be that time slows down. So listen to this. if an object is stationary, then all of its motion is invested in time, all 100% of it. And it is moving through time. Now, I have to mention something here. Everyone's been on a train and going in a direction, and then another train pulls up, and you're going at the same speed. So you look, and your perception is what? That you're both stationary. This is, again, one of the keys to understanding relativity. That the definition of stationary and motion is in the eye of the beholder. It's in the experience of the beholder, the perception of the beholder. So in a sense, however we can understand this, we are all moving at the speed of light. Now, what happens when an object begins to accelerate through space? Now, what happens is instead of 100% of its motion being invested in time, some of it could be this tiniest fraction, is now invested in moving through space. But again, in our reality, we don't experience any of that. But what happens as you approach the speed of light? So imagine this hand is 100% time, and this is space. What happens is this. As you approach the speed of light, less and less of the motion, because it always will equal the speed of light, is invested in light. And now the object moving through space, time starts slowing down because there's less of it invested in it. When you would get to the speed of light, theoretically, which nothing can do other than divine consciousness, is now it's all invested in space and there's no time passing because there's no time left. I was like, I almost fell off my chair. It's like, that's it. That's it. That explains it. I've quoted this 100 times in lectures, but I couldn't explain how it works. So why did I think it's so important to spend so much time explaining this? For the following reason. I'm going to only mention one more scientific thing, and then we're going to get to very, very human, practical applications of this. Is that, so we would think if time slows down if you're moving through space, so Brian Greene says, well, that would mean, so if someone was on a spaceship moving through space at half the speed of light, so he would live a lot longer. He would. He would live substantially longer. But then the question comes, is he accomplishing more? And the amazing answer is no. If a person in Earth time can read 100 books in their lifetime and is now being propelled through space, they would read the same 100 books, but from Earth time, the other person is going in slow motion. Because he's still bound by time and space. Bound by time and space. And this, again, without going into it, is one of the keys to understanding Gerald Schroeder's whole book, Genesis and the Big Bang, of how can 5,772 years equal 16 billion years? Either one is right and the other is wrong. He says, no, they're both right, but with all the things we're talking about tonight, and he explains it in his scientific way, they're two different perspectives defining the same events, but from different perspectives of time. The same thing happened, but the perspective is completely different. For those who want to understand this, and I highly recommend it, Gerald Schroeder's Genesis and the Big Bang and the Science of God, where he explains how there does not have to be any contradiction between believing that it's a very ancient universe of whatever, 13 billion years, 15, they haven't decided 100% yet, and what does it mean, our tradition of 5,772 years? No questions right now. But hold them, because we will get to them. Okay, so now we're going to plug in consciousness, because consciousness is going to change everything. Everyone's had the experience, and this goes back, we have not lost track of what we started with. Why is this the first mitzvah? What's so important of becoming a master of time? So, two teenagers go to summer camp. We're in the same bunk, the same activities, day in, day out. 5 weeks later, they go home. One of them sits down in his bed and wow, I'm back home? I cannot believe what happened to the summer. It flew by like that. The other one, as he's walking up to his room, is thinking, this was the longest summer of my life. I thought it would never end. It lasted forever. They had the exact same experiences, and time passed the same for them. Space, they did the same things in the dimensions of space, but their consciousness related, not just after the fact, but as it was happening, each activity, right? They went swimming for 2 hours and it's over. We just got here, right? And the other one is, oh, thank God it's over. I thought it would last forever. But this is a deep reality here. This is what quantum physics is dealing with right now. This is what it's dealing with right now. Rabbi Nachman says, why do we have such a hard time understanding God being above time? He said, because our consciousness is so limited. He says the greater consciousness that we have, the greater ability we are, not just to understand, listen carefully, not just to understand a divine perspective of consciousness, of time, but how to make use of it. An example we've all had, I'm going to try to bring lots of examples now, is dreaming. Because when our normative consciousness goes into the background and the unconscious, the subconscious, the superconscious takes over, and it's not as bound by the space-time continuum. That's why we say in the morning, Modani lefanecha melech chai v'kayim. Thank you that you gave me another day, because sleep is like 1/60th of death. No one knows they're going to wake up. So we can experience in 10 minutes of a dream months or years. Famous story in the Gemara, which I'm not going to tell now, of Choni and Magel. Falls asleep under a tree and he wakes up and it's 70 years later. Because, like Rabbi Nachman said, the greater the intellect, the more we can, not just understand, but tap into this fourth level of time we're talking about, the divine perspective of time. So now we'll get very practical. So we know the expression, you want to get something done, ask a busy person. So that's counterintuitive. If I want to get something, this person's too busy already. No. A person who's busy is busy because they know how to handle it. They can handle it. If someone has all the time in the world on their hands, that expression, that's not the person to go to. They're not going to know how to get it accomplished. So what happens with time here? Time is affected by consciousness. Not just by physical motion or the automatic motion through time, which we'll call aging or entropy. But this is a different kind of motion. This is sometimes called the lightning streaks of the intellect. Pew! Right? The light bulb goes on. Just pew! Flash. Again, another example. We've all had days. I'll give two definitions of days. A day where we want to accomplish a whole lot. We have this list, this is big, right? And we get up and this happens and that happens and the phone rings and I stub my toe and this and that. And I get to the end of the day and I look at my list and I said, I did absolutely nothing today. And you look back at the day, it's like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. Then there are other days where you have your list and you put your mind to it. Very important expression. You put your mind to it. And at the end of the day, it's all checked off. So that's one kind of day. Then there's another kind of day where, let's say you want to accomplish a lot and you end up doing nothing. But then there are days you get up, like remember Sundays in America? Yeah. Remember, we're broadcasting from Israel. Sundays is a work day. But you get up on a Sunday like, what am I going to do today? Like, pat around the house. And you fall into a project. You didn't plan it. You don't even have all this energy, but you get into it. And then you get into it, right? And by the end of the day, you've done something that's been on your list for, 14 years, right? And you didn't plan any of it. So these are all examples of it's up here. Again, time is passing linearly. It's passing circularly. It's passing spirally. But there's a higher level that affects all of that. And I'm still working this one out. But it is counterintuitive because the example we brought of if you could read 100 books in Earth time, but you were on a spaceship, would you be able to read 300 books? No. You'd read the same 100 books, but from Earth time, it would appear that the other person, which is really you, is in slow motion. But this is not true of consciousness. Because there's a certain level, it's still the 4 dimensions. It's the 3 lower levels of perception of time. But once you hook into divine perception of time, what does that mean? It means having a soul. That's why Sefer Yetzirah calls it soul. And what do we say? We have a divine soul. Nefesh Elokit. So if we have a divine soul, and like the Baal Shem says, that the divine soul is a chelak Eloka mimamal mamash, an actual part of God above. So that means we have the potential of tapping into a divine perception of time. And this, on the most practical level, makes a difference between a person who's successful and not successful. And that's their own definition. We're not defining here what successful and not successful is. But in one's own mind is, if I don't know how to use time, I'm a slave to time. I'm still in Mitzrayim. I could have 3 cars, I could have 5 homes, I could have all the money in the world in the bank, and I'm still a slave to time. Unless I'm a master of time. And you can be a master of time and you have 5 homes and 3 cars and all the money in the bank. Better proposition. But the idea is, to become a master of time, God is saying, that's the first mitzvah you need to come out of Egypt. You want to really come out of Egypt? Then learn to be a master of time. Learn to hook into your intellect. Learn to hook into divine consciousness. How do we do it? The Torah gives us the tools. Torah, mitzvot, prayer. We have the tools. We have 613 mitzvot. We have prayer. We have thousands of books of the sages and Chassidut and Kabbalah and Midrash that teach us tools of how to become a master of time. So I want to give an example that is in my book about light. For those who have it, you'll remember this. This beautiful example, and I'll say it in short because we're getting towards the end of our time here, is that light is Gematria 207. Shabbat is Gematria 702. In verse number, just a mirror image, 207, 702. So what's the connection? So how do we begin Shabbat? Light candles. We bring light in. Shabbos is all about light, all about spirituality. So what do we get on Shabbos? It's called a neshama yetera, an extra level of soul. So why do things, we know the physical reason in the halacha. You're not supposed to run on Shabbos. You're supposed to walk slower. You're supposed to do things more relaxed. Time slows down. It's not because we're moving faster through space, but what are we doing with an extra level of soul? We are moving on a spiritual level, as it were, at this approaching the speed of light. So that's the connection of Shabbat and light. The truth is, I would need more time to explain this, but I hope everyone got the idea here. Now, there's the more consciousness, the greater mastery of time, and the more it slows down, meaning the more you can squeeze out of it. And that's why an efficient person can get so much done, because they're putting their mind to it. The highest sphera is called Keter. And in Keter, there are 3 aspects. And one of the aspects is called will, ratzon. And the word for will, ratzon, comes from the word ratz, run. In other words, we direct. Will means we direct our mind to move, to accomplish, to do. Ruts, run. So this explains another thing that we all experience. Everyone comments on this all the time, that the world seems to be speeding up now. We'll call it progress, history, the way things unfold. It just, 24/7 communications, technology, a computer now, a 3-year-old computer now is like almost built for obsolescence. If you don't upgrade within 3 years, the technologies are coming out so fast and furious now. So we ask, well, is time really moving faster? No. Time is not moving any faster. But what has changed? And we'll go back to 250 years ago. There are two things that happen in the physical world and the spiritual world. Around 250 years ago, within around a 30-year period, and this is all predicted in the Zohar, and you'll just forgive me, I can't say everything at this point, but the Industrial Revolution, the American Revolution, and the French Revolution, all within 30 years, especially the Industrial Revolution. It changed everything. It changed everything. People were living more or less 250 years ago as they lived 2,500 years ago. I mean, the wheels on the carriages were a little bit better, right? The bridges they knew how to build a little bit better, but then the Industrial Revolution, and who is right before these three events? Baal Shem Tov. That was the spiritual revolution that the Zohar predicted. As it said, in the 600th year of the 6th millennium, the floodgates of above and the well swings from below would flood the world. So has time changed? No, but what happened in both of these realms is the human intellect took off. Something clicked in the human intellect, like, let's make a machine. Instead of plowing our field with a little tool on an ox, let's make a machine. It changed everything. And that's how technology, there's been a momentum ever since then. In medicine, in technology, in communications, in everything. So what changed was human intellect. And so therefore, we're experiencing, right, as everything is going faster, but we get Shabbos. So that's the secret of Shabbos. If you don't have Shabbos, then it's just, right? But Shabbos, because we're masters of time. That's what Hashem begins to explain to Moshe, the calendar. What's the most fundamental component of the Jewish calendar? Shabbos. Shabbos. That's called being a master of time. Because again, you can have all the technology in the world. You can have all the gadgets in the world and still be a slave not to just time, but to your lower desires. So you have all these very sophisticated people in the world who are basically ruled by their animal soul. So where are we going? Where are we going so fast? But to draw to a close here, because we began by saying that this is an introduction to what we need to get out of Egypt. And so we focus tonight on time. This is the first ingredient. So I just want to give everyone a bracha. Give everyone a bracha to really meditate on this deeply, because in the most real way, whether in our spiritual life or our professional life or our home life or our peace of mind life, these teachings have tremendous applicability, even though they have very mystical pinnings here and scientific underpinnings. But when we learn to translate it and to hook into these teachings, we become masters of time.